arms. This whole thing is made up. We've got the proof to talk about it. And the president is finally taking some action on that front as well. It's good because it's now so out of hand. They've got bulletproof backpacks for kids now in school.
But this common everyday backpack is packing something extra. Its manufacturer says it can stop a bullet.
This has gotten to insanity. We're going to talk to the guy who came up with that idea. We're also going to talk to Congressman Keith Ellison and Congressman Steve Cohen. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the fiscal cliff negotiations. It is an epic disaster, and we're going to show you exactly what's wrong with it and how the Republicans have gotten so much more radical in just the span of 2 years. I'm going to prove that to you on tonight's show as well. And then finally, I mean, you want to talk about crazy. Look at what they did to these poor women who they pulled over for marijuana. Cavity searches?
This has been an eye-opening experience for me, okay? Never been pulled over, never searched like this.
Well, it gets a lot worse than that, and they didn't have anything on them. Wow. All right, it's go time.
We're truly independent. There is no corporate control here. Independent programming by the independent company.
The president had a press conference today about guns, and in it he was forceful and laid out the case for what we need to do differently. Let's watch.
The fact that we can't prevent every act of violence doesn't mean we can't steadily reduce the violence and prevent the very worst violence. That's why I've asked the Vice President to lead an effort that includes members of my cabinet and outside organizations to come up with a set of concrete proposals no later than January, proposals that I then intend to push without delay.
Now, he says this is not going to be a task force that lasts 6 months and then goes nowhere. There's going to be immediate action. That sounds good. I hope that's the case. Now, the reason Biden's an excellent guy to head this up is he was the person who pushed through the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act that banned assault weapons in the first place. So he's got a lot of experience. That took him 6 years to do. I hope it doesn't take that long this time around. Now, the president also has the American people behind him. New poll out from CNN. Semi-automatic assault guns ban. Look at that. 62% in favor, only 37% against. This should be a layup given those numbers. Now, Jake Tapper did have one question for the president that was a little devastating. Let's watch.
This is not the first issue, the first incident of horrific gun violence of your 4 years. Where have you been?
Well, here's where I've been, Jake. I've been President of the United States dealing with the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, an auto industry on the verge of collapse, 2 wars. I don't think I've been on vacation.
So that was a very tough question by Jake Tapper. I don't know if you found that answer satisfactory. Let's talk about it with Michael Schur. He's our political correspondent here. In fact, he is our epic political correspondent. Michael, you know, look, this is what the president falls back on all the time, and he's right. There were 2 wars, kind of, and, you know, GM, yada. There was a lot of things that were going on, but at the same time, let's keep it real. He didn't think it was politically advantageous to take on the NRA in his first term.
Yeah, well, it's more than just that. I mean, every president is busy. That's part of the job. You're busy. Just because you're doing wars and then saving an industry doesn't mean you don't also have time to act on guns. And like you said, he has treaded too lightly into this area. He even right now could be issuing executive orders. He could be doing things immediately, which he is not doing right now. He's talking about doing something a month from now. All the credit in the world to him for getting this going. Joe Biden's the right guy to be leading this. Joe Biden's starting tomorrow, meeting with cabinet secretaries. But an executive order would show that the White House is ahead of this issue. Barack Obama is very rarely ahead of an issue.
So, well, yeah, he's a great follower in that sense. But look, if he does something, then great. And you wipe away the past, and thank God for that. But on the issue of executive orders, you're right, Michael. George H.W. Bush in 1989 passed an executive order to ban import of assault rifles. So now that's not a complete ban, but it's a ban on import. That's pretty good, and that's a Republican president. And then Clinton not only did the assault weapons ban, which we just explained, Biden shepherded through the Senate, he did an executive order to ban firearm imports and ammunition from China. Those little things add up. And of course, after we got rid of the assault weapons ban in 2004 when it lapsed, the number of mass shootings has doubled per year.
Right. Of course. He could work with the inspector generals. He could have the inspection. Everything could be accelerated by the president. Once again, he's not really accelerating.
All right. Let's now turn to Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee to talk about this issue. Congressman Cohen, do you sense that now there is a definitive difference in how members in Congress are viewing this issue? Will we get real change?
I think there's a good chance we will, because the response has been greater than I've ever heard it, and there have been tragedies before. We heard a great response when Gabby Giffords, a member of my class and Keith Ellison's class, was shot and others were killed in Tucson, and then after the shootings in Texas. But the children really brought it home. And I think there's a lot of interest, even Republicans who all of a sudden they have some interest in the issue. Now, whether it manifests itself in allowing bills to be considered in the Judiciary Committee, of which I'm a member, and to be voted on is another issue. And that may not happen. And that could be stopped by either the chairman or by the speaker and the chairman.
But Congressman, you know, it's Michael Schur. I want to ask you, what can be done, though? I mean, you're saying it may not come to that. The committee members may block it. What can be done so that it doesn't happen, so this blocking doesn't happen? Is there something the White House can do to overstep that?
Well, not really. I mean, there's certain things, just like what you showed what President Bush had done, but all those things, and I don't know for a fact, but when you ban imported guns and imported weapons, all that's doing is helping American manufacturers. That could have been a trade thing more than it is a public safety thing. And the NRA is not concerned about protecting the interest of the manufacturers of guns and bullets in China or in Italy, only in America. And the NRA has much become that. I am not an anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment person. I passed the right to carry bill in Tennessee almost 20 years ago, but it was a responsible bill. I think people have a right to own guns and rifles, but not assault weapons, not multi-magazines with all these 30 bullets or whatever it is at a time that's only used for assaults on individuals and human beings. I think there need to be strong mental health laws and mental health tests for standards for who can get a license and who can buy a gun, and everybody that buys a gun should be checked. I get an F from the NRA now. At one time, they liked me. They've gone overboard. They give me an F. I'm proud to have an F.
That's great. Congressman Cohen, I want to show you a member of Congress that feels differently. It's Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. Let me show you a clip and get your reaction.
I'm shocked.
My favorite gun is an AR-15 because you can be so accurate with it, and I scored the best in my class of any of the men too in that class.
AR-15 is
it's a rifle.
Yeah, well, that's
a
combat weapon.
I love it.
But it can be made automatic, but it is a semi-automatic 222, I think.
I like being accurate, and that is a great gun.
Well, are you going to be able to get past the enthusiasm of Republicans like that if you're trying to ban assault weapons?
Representative Bachmann's a member of my class as well. I'm sure she's accurate as a marksman. She's not so accurate when she makes statements in Congress, and I wish she was more accurate there.
So now Nancy Pelosi says, look, I think we can get a magazine limiting the magazine's number of bullets a magazine can hold, that kind of legislation passed right away. But it leads me to believe that she thinks it's going to be harder to actually get the assault weapons banned. What do you think about the chance of that happening in Congress?
I think they're both difficult. I hate to disagree with Speaker Pelosi. I have the greatest admiration, and certainly she has experience and knowledge. I don't see where you've got that many Republicans. We would need about 20 Republicans. I don't know that we'll get them, but beyond that, you need the bill to be scheduled for a vote to get it up, and I don't think that the Republicans can allow it up. The NRA is too powerful in Republican districts in this country because of redistricting, has got Republican red districts and blue districts. And the red district people, the NRA has a stronger power than they do in the general election, and certainly in blue districts. And because of that, they've got a strong influence on the Republican caucus. I think the Republican caucus now, both on this issue and on taxing the people whose incomes are $250,000 to $1 million, have become imprisoned by their own success. They are showing how much of a minority party they are, and I think the two issues of caring about the rich to the detriment of all the people who earn $250,000 and less, 98% of the American public, in addition to not caring about standing up for the safety of the American public, NRA, and for whatever guns and weapons and devices they want to sell could be what puts them out in 2014. It's almost unheard of for a party with the president to gain in an off year, but it could happen on these two issues, safety and recognition of the middle class, and they're setting themselves up and showing the American public they are special interest, NRA, and concerned about the rich.
Congressman, hearing you say that, there has to be a way to marginalize these people. That there have to be Republicans who come over. I thought when I heard about Newtown, made me think of Birmingham, Alabama, and the church bombing there, and the dogs and the hoses that were set on kids there, and then the Children's March. That really changed the whole tone of the civil rights movement. Don't you see that people are going to start coming over? Are there any of your colleagues that are going to start coming over now because this has hit children? This is at a breaking point. Forget the NRA.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I guess there was still resistance among some of those folks in the Deep South on civil rights. Lyndon Johnson knew how to work Senator Byrd in Virginia, and he got it passed. I don't know whether or not there's that type of relationship that could exist with the Republicans in the House. And I know they're going to be affected, but I just think the NRA is so strong. They're really, while there was this resistance to segregation, which was anathema, there wasn't necessarily a politically powerful interest group that was out there for segregation, like the NRA. There wasn't anything on that side of it, and the venality of it is so important. They give contributions, they score you, they tell their members what to do, and people are indeed afraid. There was a woman, Susan Lynn, in Tennessee, who was beaten by the NRA, and she was a down-the-line conservative Republican. One issue, she thought businesses, which used to be the backbone of the Republican Party, should have the right on their own private property rights, to tell their employees and others not to bring guns on their property. Because the NRA wants all areas to be open. They targeted her for defeat, and they got her.
Wow, that's an amazing story, Steve Cohen. And I got to say, it makes me a little worried that you might be right, that you might not be able to pass it, in which case I hope the American people are angry and show that anger so that we can get real change through the ballot box. All right, Congressman Cohen.
To get real change, you're going to have a Democrat majority in the House, and the Republicans are giving us the issues. They don't care about the middle class. They care about the super wealthy. When they can only go to vote, which they're going to do tomorrow, for $1 million, that shows where they're coming from. And even at $1 million, that gives those people tax breaks up to $1 million. And they're hurting the middle class. And on guns, they are out of control.
All right, Congressman Cohen, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's good to be current.
All right, thank you. Now, when we come back, well, the president could use a little help in negotiating with the Republicans, and he thinks maybe it's got something to do with him.
And I don't know how much of that just has to do with, it is very hard for them to say yes to me.
Well, for reasons you might not imagine. And there's Congressman Keith Ellison. He's going to join us next to talk about this issue. And then, of course, later in the program, the elbow of the day is back. And it lands, as usual, on an appropriate target. Young Turks.